Hey everybody. I know that I have my event scheduled for 12:30. I understand that. But I decided to just go ahead and come live right now so that I can be in the midst of this reporting. Sean P. Diddy Combs has been arrested and indicted. Well, he has been taken into custody and has been indicted. It's a 3-count indictment returned from the grand jury in reference to Sean P. Diddy Combs. Now, I'm going to get into this live update from the authorities. We're going to get into that first. I'm trying to get into the live stream myself, y'all, so I'm kind of stalling. My bad. There we go. I'm in here. Awesome. So we're going to get into this news brief. It's a news brief from, I believe, the FBI, the Southern District Office. So we're going to get into this, and then I'm going to read to you guys parts of the unsealed indictment, as well as a letter that was submitted to the judge assigned to this case. Guys, come on in. We're going to go ahead and get started right away because this is pretty much breaking news happening right now.
And participated in a racketeering conspiracy,
including sex trafficking,
that used the business empire he controlled,
kidnapping,
to carry out criminal activity,
bribery,
including
sex trafficking,
of
justice,
forced labor, kidnapping.
Let me say a little bit more about the charges.
Bribery.
The indictment alleges that
of justice.
and exploited women and
Let me say a little bit more about the
charges in a variety of ways.
The indictment alleges that Combs abused and exploited women and other people for years.
And coercion to cause victims to engage in extended sexual performances with male commercial sex workers.
Coercion to cause
victims
to engage in extended sexual performances with male.
Combs allegedly planned,
some of whom
and controlled the
caused to be transported over state lines.
Called freak-offs.
Combs allegedly planned
and
controlled the sex performances, which
the freak-offs sometimes lasted days at a time,
and he often electronically reported them.
And often
freak-offs sometimes lasted days at a time,
ketamine,
involved multiple commercial sex workers, and often involved a variety of narcotics,
victims to keep them obedient and compliant,
ecstasy, and GHB.
As alleged, when
Combs distributed to the victims to keep them obedient and compliant.
And he subjected victims to physical,
as alleged, didn't get his way,
and verbal abuse,
he was violent,
so that they would participate.
And he subjected victims to physical,
and that Combs
emotional, and verbal abuse
through
so that
objects
they would participate in the
victims
freak
at times by their hair. On one occasion in March of 2016,
dragged victims at times by their hair.
Video and later reported in
one occasion in March of 2016, that conduct was captured on video
through a vase at a
later
victim
reported in the
in a
media.
Los Angeles hotel when the victim was attempting to flee.
Kicked, dragged, and threw a vase at a victim in a Los Angeles hotel when the victim was attempting to
I'm
flee.
not playing Max's live. Hold on.
This often resulted in injuries
Not what I
to
wanted
the
to do,
victims.
guys. Hold on.
That Combs threatened
Took
and
days
coerced
or
victims
weeks to
to
heal.
get them to participate
In addition to the violence,
freak-offs.
the indictment
Hold on, guys.
alleges that
I
Combs
have
threatened and
wrong
coerced victims to get
video queued up back here.
them aid in the freak-offs.
Let's go to the history. I was like, why do I see Max's icon on here? Sorry, guys. I have to get to the right one. I have to get to the right video. So just bear with me. This is it. My apologies. I'm like sitting here in the world. Does it look like that? My bad, guys. My fault. I had queued up the wrong video from my history because I did go over to Max's channel and see him streaming this press conference. And I said, oh my goodness, let me go ahead and stream it. All right, let's get back to where we were.
He used the embarrassing and sensitive recordings he made of the freak-offs as collateral against the victims. And the indictment alleges that he maintained control over the victims in several ways, including by giving them drugs, by giving and threatening to take away financial support or housing, by promising them career opportunities, by monitoring their whereabouts, and even by dictating their physical appearance. Because of all of this, the indictment alleges that the victims did not believe they could refuse Combs without risking their security or facing more abuse. The indictment also alleges other acts of violence undertaken by Combs and others, including violence against witnesses to his abuse, kidnapping, and arson. The indictment alleges that on more than one occasion, Combs carried or brandished firearms to intimidate and threaten victims and witnesses. Now, Combs did not do this all on his own. As I mentioned, Combs has been charged with RICO conspiracy. He used his business and employees of that business and other close associates to get his way. Those individuals allegedly included high-ranking supervisors in the business, personal assistants, security staff, and household staff. The indictment alleges that those individuals facilitated the freak-offs. They booked the hotel rooms and stocked them with the supplies, including drugs, baby oil, personal lubricant, extra linens, and lighting. When the hotel rooms got damaged, they helped clean it up. They arranged for victims and commercial sex workers to travel for the freak-offs, and they delivered large quantities of cash to Combs to pay for the commercial sex workers. The indictment also alleges that they helped Combs cover up his crimes. During the March 2016 incident at the LA hotel that I mentioned earlier, a member of the hotel security staff intervened, and Combs attempted to bribe the staff member with a stack of cash to make sure that what happened was kept quiet. And as the indictment alleges, in late 2023, after public allegations were made about Combs' crimes, he and others pressured witnesses and victims to stay silent, including by making phone calls to witnesses and victims and giving them a false narrative of what they had experienced. And as alleged, Combs used others to help conceal his abuse by monitoring and preventing victims from leaving a location in order to hide their injuries, or by locating and contacting a victim who had attempted to flee. As part of this investigation, in March of this year, special agents from HSI executed search warrants at Combs' residences in Miami and Los Angeles. They also executed a warrant for Combs' electronic devices. During those searches, agents seized evidence of the crimes charged in this indictment. They seized firearms and ammunition, including 3 defaced AR-15s and a large capacity drum magazine. They also seized evidence of the freak-offs, electronic devices that contain images and videos of the freak-offs with multiple victims. And they seized cases and cases of the kinds of personal lubricant and baby oil that Combs' staff allegedly used to stock hotel rooms for the freak-offs, more than 1,000 bottles altogether. Here are some of the items that we recovered during the searches. As you can see here, this is a drum magazine, large capacity, and it contains, I believe, 59 rounds. I mentioned as well, we recovered 3 AR-15s.
Wow.
A shot of one of the AR-15s, and you can see right here, the serial number has been thoroughly defaced.
Oh, wow.
Another picture of more ammunition and parts of 2 AR-15s right there.
Oh, wow.
Now, I want to be clear about 2 things. First, this office is determined to investigate and prosecute anyone who engages in sex trafficking, no matter how powerful or wealthy or famous you may be. No one should doubt our commitment on that. A year ago, Sean Combs stood in Times Square and was handed a key to New York City. Today, he's been indicted and will face justice in the Southern District of New York. Second, we are not done. This investigation is ongoing, and I encourage anyone with information about this case to come forward and to do it quickly. Anyone with information can call 1-877-4-HSI-TIP. I want to express my deep appreciation for the victims and witnesses who have used their voices and helped bring this criminal conduct to light.
This is just so surreal. They found, I mean, it's not odd to find lubricant and baby oil, but that's an excessive amount of lubricant and over 1,000 bottles of baby oil. I mean, I don't even want to think about it. I'm just going to leave that right there. Because what were they doing with that much baby oil, guys? And were they like small bottles or were they the big, the big bottles? I want to see pictures of the inventory of what they got from his home. They've shown photos of course, the weaponry that he held, but I want to see the photos of the baby oil. I want to see if it's the small bottles, the little travel size, or the regular bottles.
Not be here without them. I also want to thank the dedicated case agents on the HSI Trafficking in Person Squad in New York. They have been with us since day one and have worked tirelessly on this investigation. They will continue to be invaluable partners to us. I also want to thank the incredible agents and analysts from SCNY who have also provided tremendous assistance on this case. I'm deeply grateful for their continued work. And finally, I want to thank the outstanding career prosecutors from SCNY who are handling this case. Meredith Foster, Emily Johnson, Chrissy Slavic, Madison Spicer, and Mitzi Steiner, and their supervisors, Jamie Backleeper and Jacqueline Kelly. They are members of the Civil Rights Unit in our criminal division. We created the Civil Rights Unit when I became U.S. Attorney. I'm deeply proud of their work on this and so many other cases. I'll now take some questions.
Aaron Katursky, ABC.
Thanks, Nick. Damian, thanks. The indictment describes aggressive, open, violent, hedonistic abuse that you say was recurrent and widely known. Why did it take law enforcement so long?
I don't know that they're going to answer. He's going to be able to answer that question as far as the length of time. Because, well, first of all, the feds will investigate you for 10 to 15 years before proceeding with charges. Because the feds want to be sure that they have their ducks in a row. They have a 90% conviction rate.
To intervene, how many women were victimized by Sean Combs and how many others were involved?
Look, our investigation is ongoing. We are committed to bringing justice to everyone who's been victimized by the defendant. I can't tell you why it took so long. I think the better focus is on the fact that we are here today. And we are committed to making sure that justice is done. Next question.
Thank you. Julia Ainsley, NBC.
Thank you for doing this. You said we are not done and that Combs did not do this alone. Do you foresee that there could be other charges related to this case?
I'm not taking anything off the table.
Oh, wow.
Chad Fisher, Newsday.
What's the difference between the sex trafficking and promoting travel for the purpose of prostitution?
Well, there are different crimes with different elements. I don't think we should get into the nitty-gritty of the legal discussion right now, but the sex trafficking, we believe, they're all serious offenses, but the sex trafficking conduct carries some significant penalties, and we are gratified that we were able to bring that charge.
One more coercive than the other?
I'm not going to be able to get into that, but you can look it up, and yes, sex trafficking, especially when it involves coercion or force, is a very serious crime, and it carries significant penalties.
Good afternoon, Darla Miles, ABC 7 New York. Thank you for this press conference and for the details. 2 questions. In context of this indictment and the information that was presented to the grand jury, are you able to clarify the number of victims? It's mentioned plural in the indictment, but can you specify the number of victims just for this particular indictment? And secondly, can you provide details about the alleged arson?
Unfortunately, I'm not able to provide either. The number of victims, you are correct. We are intentional in saying multiple. The details of the arson incident are limited to what we have in the indictment and also the detention letter that we filed, which contains more details than the indictment does at various points. But we don't have anything more beyond that. Next question.
Lynn Trent, CNN.
Are any of his accomplices or associates under investigation? And additionally, could he face any more charges?
So the investigation is ongoing. That means both as to him and to anyone else who we believe committed the crime with him.
Juliet Papa.
Hi, good morning from 1010 Wins. Any indication that some of the women or victims here were imprisoned in his residences, and did he have locations where he kept them, and they were not allowed to leave? And also, he's indicted here, although there were searches and raids in LA, Miami. Why in New York?
Well, I'm biased. I'm the U.S. Attorney in the Southern District of New York. I think that we have an outstanding track record of bringing some of the most impactful, sprawling, complex, difficult sex trafficking, human trafficking, labor trafficking, you name it. The Southern District of New York can do it, and so we're very proud of that. And so the scope and complexity of this investigation isn't something that we ran from. It's something that we embrace, and we will continue to do that. As to your question about whether he imprisoned anyone, all I can say is that, I mentioned this March 2016 incident where something was caught on video where a victim was attempting to flee, and there was violence that was associated with it. That was at a hotel.
I believe they're referring to Cassie.
Thanks a lot. Does your office intend to seek remand, or are you reaching a bail package? And if you're willing, how would you contrast this with the R. Kelly case in EDNY in terms of the elements? Thanks.
So we will be seeking detention. We have filed a letter laying out our reasoning for seeking pretrial detention. I'm not going to be able to expand beyond what's in the letter, but it contains all of the reasoning, and it contains the law as well. There is a presumption of detention in a case like this, and we think that's warranted.
John Anise, New York Daily News.
Thank you. I was hoping to get some more detail about the searches of his residence, the guns, the cases of lubricant, and the videos. Where were they found amongst his residence? Were they all scattered around the houses in one place? I kind of wanted to just get a better picture of how that stuff was found.
Well, look, I think that some of the details that you're seeking are in the detention letter. So, for instance, some of the AR-15s, 2 of the 3 defaced AR-15s were found in his bedroom closet in Miami, broken down into parts along with magazines with ammunition loaded in them. So some of that detail is in the detention letter. Beyond that, I'm not going to be able to get into where other items were stored.
Ben Kochman, Post.
Hey, thanks for doing this. Your office was the office that had been prosecuting Jeffrey Epstein before he died in custody. I have not read your detention memo yet. It's the first thing I'm going to do after this ends. But does the memo address, or is your office concerned with Combs's safety in custody, given what happened with Epstein?
Right.
So we are concerned with anyone's safety whenever they are detained prior to trial. It's part of our obligations to keep people safe as well. It's part of the criminal justice system. So, but I do not draw any sort of connection between Jeffrey Epstein's suicide and what may or may not happen.
Well, they're saying that he sideways himself.
Detained pre-trial. And of course, the decision whether
Jeffrey Epstein did not sideways himself.
To a judge. Our position is that pretrial detention is warranted under the law and based on the facts of this case. And I'll leave it at that.
Are some of the prosecutors on this case some of the same prosecutors that had been handling that or that worked on the Maxwell case?
So I'm not going to get into the staffing. I will say that this team, this group of AUSAs, this incredible group has been working on this case around the clock, and they've had their hands full. Next question.
Gus Rosendale, NBC News.
Good morning, sir. Combs' attorney said that his client has been cooperative with investigators. He said that this morning. I was wondering if you would have a reaction to that.
Let me just say this. I think that generally with increasing frequency, the word cooperative or cooperating has taken on tremendous elasticity, and it no longer really bears any relation to what the word means when we use it in a very specific context. So responding to lawful process and the like does not qualify as cooperation when we use that term here.
Mike Sisak, AP.
Thanks. To that end, was there any discussion of Mr. Combs surrendering? I understand he was taken into custody at a hotel in Manhattan last night, and maybe that wasn't the plan. Can you elaborate on how that came about and why that was?
I'm not going to be able to get into any sort of operational details as to how he was taken into custody and when. He is in custody right now. He will be appearing later today.
Was there any discussion about surrendering, given they claim he's cooperating?
I'm not going to be able to get into law enforcement tactics or operations. Well,
wow,
I
his microphone is low.
It is very meaningful to us that weapons were possessed, as we allege in the indictment. Part of the reason why this conduct was so pervasive and harmful was because victims and others didn't necessarily feel comfortable denying him his wishes, as we allege, because of the presence of firearms. I should leave it there.
Thanks. Last question, Jacob Shamison.
Jacob Shamsian, Business Insider. Thank you. Given that he's the sole defendant in this case and that you allege he's part of a conspiracy that involves members of his companies, do you anticipate a superseding indictment that will bring allegations against other members of those companies or other co-conspirators as well?
I can't take anything off the table. Anything is possible. Our investigation is very active and ongoing. And I think a lot of you who cover this office know that when we say such things, that developments are certainly foreseeable, but I cannot predict them sitting here today. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
So he is done with the presser. That, oh my goodness. That was a lot. That was a lot. But that's not all, guys. That is not all that's going on. He kind of touched on some of what they have listed in the letter to the judge. Not only did they present the indictment, let me get over here. Hey guys, welcome. If you're just getting in here, please be sure to smash that like button and share. Also, if you're catching this on the replay, go ahead and weigh in on this case and let me know what your thoughts are. This one, I mean, we knew something was coming, but with the raids on his home happening in March? Yeah, March of 2024. And now we're in September. I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. I didn't really believe that this day would come. And the guy that I was streaming accidentally at the beginning of this live, Max, he and I were talking about it just the other day, saying, when is the feds going to pick Diddy up? What's going on with Diddy? Like, they just went into his house, took a bunch of stuff in, very dramatic form, as, that was televised. They had like a real serious show of force at his properties when they raided him. So I thought at that point he would be taken into custody almost immediately, if not that day, within a week. So now to see the indictment come out several months later, it just kind of it's scary to me, because that means that, well, I'm going to share some of the indictment with you guys, but this investigation has been going on for a very long time. A lot of people are speculating that the investigation started or was triggered based on Cassie Ventura's lawsuit, not based on this indictment. Not at all. The feds have been investigating Sean Puff Daddy Combs. So now, this is the letter that they sent to the judge who has oversight of this case. I'm trying to, where's my, oh, here it is. I was trying to find my cursor so I could move this up so you guys can see as I read this to you. So it says, their judge, I believe her name is Tornowski. The defendant, Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, aka P. Diddy, aka Diddy, aka PD, aka Love, was taken into custody this morning after a grand jury sitting in this Southern District this district returned a 3-count indictment charging him with crimes related to his decades-long pattern of physical and sexual violence against multiple victims, and his use of force, threats, and coercion to enact his will, protect his reputation, and fulfill his sexual desires. The government respectfully submits this letter in anticipation of the defendant's appearance before this court later today, and in support of the government's request for defendant's detention pending trial. So right there, it lets you know that the state of New York, the Southern District, the federal government are calling for Diddy's detention until his trial. The gentleman that we just listened to pretty much said as much, but they're going to break down in this letter the reasons why they feel that he needs to remain in custody pending his trial. Now, as set forth below, there is no condition or combination of conditions that will reasonably assure the appearance of the defendant as required and the safety of others and the community, not to mention the integrity of the proceedings, as reflected by the gravity of the charges in the indictment. The defendant is dangerous and poses an ongoing threat to the safety of the community. If released, he remains a serious risk of flight despite the conditions offered by his counsel. Most glaring, the defendant also poses a significant risk of obstructing justice. Indeed, and as set forth below, during the course of the charge conduct, the defendant has attempted to bribe security staff and threatened to interfere with witnesses to his criminal conduct. He has already tried to obstruct the government's investigation of this case repeatedly, contacting victims and witnesses and feeding them false narratives of events as described and detailed below. There are simply no conditions that would ensure that the defendant's efforts to obstruct and tamper with witnesses will stop. The defendant, therefore, cannot overcome the statutory presumption in favor of detention, and the court should order him detained. So now they're going to give some background in this letter as well. They're giving some background. Let's get to the background. So it says on September 17, 2024, an indictment returned by a federal grand jury sitting in the Southern District of New York was unsealed, charging the defendant with racketeering conspiracy from in or about 2008 through or on or about the date of the indictment, in violation of 18 USC 1916D. Count 1, trafficking from in or about 2009 through in or about 2018, in violation of 18 U.S. 1591 and count 2, the interstate transportation to engage in prostitution from in or about 2009 through in or about 2024, in violation of 18 U.S. Code 2421A. Now, it says A, Combs' use of violence, threats, and coercion. Since at least 2008, the defendant and other members and associates of the racketeering enterprise alleged in the indictment, the enterprise, which includes the defendant's multiple facet business empire, the Combs businesses, wielded the power and prestige of the defendant's reputation as a musician, entrepreneur, and figure in the entertainment industry to commit federal crimes, including racketeering, trafficking, and other offenses. As charged in the indictment, many of those crimes involved the sexual abuse, the essay and exploitation of women and other crimes of violence. Now, the essay and trafficking, it says using the power and prestige of the enterprise, the defendant lured female victims into the defendant's orbit, often under the pretense of a romantic relationship. Ew, like what? Okay, I have to stop right there. Diddy to me has never been attractive overwhelmingly or just moderately or just like I don't know. I think it's the way his eyes set in his face for me. I think he has like little beady eyes. And that concerns me. Anybody with those little beady eyes, it just worries me. And Diddy has those deviant looking eyes to me. The defendant then used force, threats of force, and coercion to cause those female victims to engage in sexual activity, which included frequent sex acts with male commercial sex workers that the defendant referred to as freak offs. Freak offs were elaborate sex performances that the defendant arranged, directed, masturbated during, and often electronically recorded. Freak offs occurred regularly from at least in or around 2009 through this year, sometimes lasted multiple days and frequently involved multiple sex workers. The defendant arranged freak offs with the assistance of members and associates of the enterprise, including employees of his business and the hotel rooms where they were staged often sustained significant damage. Wow. That's just oh my goodness. Okay. The defendant ensured the victims would participate in freak offs through coercion and violence. For instance, the defendant provided controlled substances, including ketamine, ecstasy, and gamma hydroxylate, GHB. The female victims to the female victims so that they could and would continue to engage in freak offs despite fatigue, physical and emotional exhaustion, and pain. Additionally, both during freak offs and separate from freak offs, the defendant subjected female victims to physical, emotional, and verbal abuse, in part to cause them to engage in freak offs. The defendant hit, kicked, threw objects at, and dragged female victims, sometimes by their hair. At least a dozen witnesses will confirm that they personally observed the defendant's violence towards women and or the injuries sustained by women at the defendant's hand. One indictment of physical wait, I'm sorry, hold on, let me make sure I got that right. Yeah, I'm sorry, one incident of physical abuse occurred when a female victim was attempting to leave the hotel following a March 2016 freak-off. This abuse was captured on video surveillance and publicly reported in May 2024. Now we know that video is the ominous video featuring and showing actually Cassie Ventura attempting to leave, and Diddy comes out in pretty much nothing. He has on a towel. It's barely wrapped around him, but he's in such a rage. He's kicking and just rolling her, like punching. She's on the floor and she's kind of like in the fetal position, trying to protect herself. I mean, most of America has seen that video, but I'm just giving you guys like the overall description. Like it was really intense. And you could see in that video that this was probably not his first time at Rage. When that video was released, that's when we got the fake apology video from Diddy. The defendant's assaults often resulted in serious injuries to the victims that took days or weeks to heal. For example, in approximately 2012 in Manhattan, the defendant paid over $46,000 to cover damages to a penthouse hotel room following a freak-off. That's just, oh my goodness, that's a lot of money. $46,000 worth of damages to a hotel where you're hosting a party with adults. There had to have been like, oh my gosh, the videos of these freak-offs, if they're put into evidence, if there's videos of these freak-offs putting the evidence, guys, first of all, let me just let everybody know right now, this is a case that I would love to be in person, sitting in the gallery, looking at the evidence, because first of all, it's a federal case, so the feds do not televise their cases. I don't believe there's ever been. Let me see. Let me do some quick research real quick. Has the federal government ever televised a criminal trial? I'm trying to see. It says here, electronic media coverage of criminal proceedings in federal courts has been expressly prohibited under Federal Rule of Criminal Procedure 53 since the criminal rules were adopted in 1946. So, yeah, there's not going to be any electronic media coverage. This is going to be one where there has to be boots on the ground. And guys, I am telling you right now, this trial will probably happen a year and a half to 2 years because, you know, all of the motions, all of the arguments, all of the pre-trial, all of the discovery that his attorneys will need to review. This is if he takes it to trial. I'm believing that he is going to take it to trial because he's Diddy. It's his reputation on the line. If he pled to this, I mean, if he pleads to this, we can just assume that there's some seriously damaging information in his discovery that he does not want shown publicly. There's something there's something even more damaging for his career as far as his mind once he sees his discovery and is advised by his attorneys. You know, if he pleads, there's damaging, extremely damaging footage of him at these freak offs that the federal government now has in their possession. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. But this is one that is, you know, an in person, and I really, really would love to attend. Hey, Lisa says what? Hey, Michelle. Hey, Vlog Liquor. My goal is to definitely attend. I will be reaching out to my supporters and my subscribers. If you guys can help, that will be great. But I'm also thinking about getting a little part-time job. Because, guys, I can't miss this. If he goes to trial, this is going to be a trial the likes as far as size and just the ripple effect across the world. This trial is going to be the likes of O.J. Simpson's trial. Everybody got to watch that live, of course. But I'm just saying, I know I'm not going to be the only vlogger that's going to go there. I know that. So there's going to be information coming out of that courtroom on a daily basis. And I want to be one of those people to be coming out of that courthouse in Manhattan on a daily basis. My plan would be to get, once they get the ball rolling and the evidence squared away and what his lawyers can argue to get out and what has to keep in and as far as evidence. Once that's all said and done and they set the trial date, the judge will usually give an approximation of how long they believe the trial will last, based on the evidence, based on the witnesses, based on the experts, based on the defense's witnesses. I mean, the judge will take all that into account and they'll kind of come up with a guesstimate of the length. Now, will I go for the entire trial? Probably not. I say that because what I want to do initially is go up to New York, get like a lay of the land. And when I say a lay of the land, I mean like the courthouse, Airbnbs in the area, places to eat, the safety, like, just kind of look around and stuff, because I want to definitely plan this out and have everything ready to rock and roll. I think midway. I'll go up there midway through his trial, but prior to that, I will be going up to New York to do some like recon, just checking the area and distance and walking, because I like to walk. I don't know if a lot of you guys know, but I don't drive because I have centric eye nerve damage in my eyes. So it makes it very difficult to see. Technically, I'm considered legally blind, but I make it do what it do when I'm reading. I zoom in and I put the phone all the way up to my face when I'm reading, guys. But I'm definitely interested in going to this one. And like I said, I'm going to be doing everything in my power to get there, but I will need you guys' help. And any amount is going to be appreciated. But I'm going to do my part to get there because I can't miss this one. There's just no way that I should miss this particular case and trial in person. If there was ever a trial that I needed to attend, it's the Sean Diddy Puff Daddy Combs trial. So, and oh, by the way, guys, I'm going to get my fashion on for this one. I have to get my fashion on for this one. This is my Danny Love channel, but I attended a cult leaders trial in Georgia. And every day of that trial, I basically had on jeans and a t-shirt, sneakers, or I think one day I even had on some leggings and a t-shirt. I basically dressed down every single day of that trial because his cult members were there. And there were threats made towards me prior to me going to the trial. So I wasn't going to go there suited and booted, looking nice and dressed up and, well put together if they were going to try to jump on me. Oh, no. I dressed down every day. But this trial, I'll get my, my blazers out, just get my style and stuff. You guys will see from my other channel, from Medea, you guys will see a different side of me while I cover this one because I don't have any threats against my life. I don't have any threats against me directly going to this particular trial. So I can dress accordingly and I can dress really nice. I don't need to dress down. So, hold on, guys. Uno momento. Hey. What's up? Oh, I'm live. I'm talking about Diddy. Okay, I'll call you back. All right, guys. So I definitely need to make this. I need to make my way to New York for this trial, but let's continue. The defendant also coerced victims into participating in freak-offs by controlling their careers, finances, livelihood, and or housing, among other aspects of their lives, or by threatening to disseminate recordings of freak-offs. The defendant used his considerable wealth and influence to make victims rely on him financially. For example, by paying for their rent or their cars, or by offering them career opportunities. Once he provided his support, the defendant repeatedly threatened to take it away to ensure the victim's compliance with his demands, including their participation in freak-offs. Indeed, victims believed that they could not refuse the defendant's demands, that they engage in freak-offs without risking their financial security or career prospects, or without repercussions in the form of physical or emotional abuse. Number 2, other violence. Let me scroll so that we are all kind of at the same spot on this document. All right. In addition to the defendant's physical, sexual, and emotional abuse of his romantic partners, The defendant repeatedly engaged in acts of violence directed towards his employees and others. As charged in the indictment, the defendant often assisted by members and associates of the enterprise engaged in kidnapping, arson, and physical violence, such as throwing objects at people, throwing people into the ground, and hitting, dragging, choking, and shoving others. Numerous witnesses, including the defendant's employees and others, observed and or experienced violence from the defendant firsthand and sustained lasting trauma as a result. For example, in the early morning hours of December 22, 2011, the defendant and co-conspirator a co-conspirator kidnapped an individual at Pum Pum Point to facilitate breaking into and entering the residence of another individual. Multiple witnesses would testify at trial to the events surrounding the kidnapping and break-in, the letter of which the letter of which is corroborated by police reports and other records. I think they meant to put the latter because the letter, that doesn't make sense. But anyways, let's continue. Approximately 2 weeks later, the defendant's co-conspirators set fire to individual L's vehicle by slicing open the car's convertible top and dropping a Molotov cocktail inside. Oh my goodness. The interior. Police and fire department reports extensively document the arson and conclude that the fire was intentionally set. Multiple witnesses would also testify to the defendant's bragging about his role in destroying individual L's car. More broadly, since at least 2008, allegations of the defendant's physical abuse of women and others have been publicly reported in the media, including in Hollywood blogs and on podcasts. Law enforcement reports corroborate that police responded to several incidents of the defendant's violence. Now, if law enforcement repeatedly went to Diddy's residence or responded to his violence, why hasn't I don't recall him being in court for like domestic or even like aggravated assault. I don't recall any of that. So this is saying, hold on a second, more broadly, since at least 2008. So since at least 2008, wow, including assaults against victims and other individuals. More recently, There has been an outpouring of other public allegations against the defendant, including claims of threats and physical and sexual violence dating as far back as the 1990s. Ooh, in short, my goodness. In short, the defendants, why is this? In short, the defendants' violent tendencies are widely known. However, at no point during the past 5 decades has the threat of public exposure or law enforcement intervention deterred the defendant from continuing his abuse. The defendant and members of the enterprise, including the defendant's security personnel, at times carried firearms, and the defendant himself carried and brandished firearms to intimidate and threaten others. Indeed, some victims were aware of the defendant's access to firearms. On one occasion, the defendant forced a female victim to carry a firearm on his behalf. Also talking about Cassie. Guys, they're going to call Cassie in this case. That allegation was alleged by Cassie in her lawsuit. I read her lawsuit, and that allegation was actually alleged in her lawsuit. So, yeah. And on another occasion, he pointed the firearm at a female victim. The defendant continues to have access to the pum-pums, including illegal firearms. In March 2024, during searches of the defendant's residences in Miami, Florida, and Los Angeles, California, law enforcement seized firearms and ammunition, including 3 AR-15s, each with defaced serial numbers, as well as a large capacity drum magazine, as pictured below in the close-up image. The serial number of one of the AR-15s is visibly bored through and obscured. So they basically, I don't know why would he need to do that to a firearm unless it was stolen or purchased illegally. There we go. That's the firearms that they're talking about. Can you guys see the firearms? Because they put the pictures in the in this letter to the judge. 2 of the 3 defaced AR-15s were found in the defendant's Miami bedroom closet, stored in broken down parts, along with magazines, and were loaded with ammunition as depicted below. One of the AR-15s had a 10-round magazine loaded with 10 rounds of large caliber 22.223 ammunition, while the second AR-15 had a 30-round magazine loaded with 19 rounds. Wow. So he, excuse me, he was ready for war. Diddy was ready for war, guys. He was there ready and waiting for war. That's all I could think of. Come on now. Why do you have that many AR-15s, first of all, in your possession? I mean, of course he could have weapons, you know. I don't believe that Diddy has any felonies, so he can have a weapon, but what's the purpose of having them like sitting there loaded? What was he afraid of? He was probably afraid of this exact scenario. The feds coming and knocking on the door like open up. This is probably exactly what he feared. I don't know that his AR-15s would have helped him much with the feds, because when they come in force. They show up in full force, and they've surrounded the entire building. We all saw on TV what that Miami and California property looked like with the feds all over it. And I mean, these are large properties, and they had more than enough officers to exact the search. At large capacity drum magazine loaded with 59 rounds of ammunition was seized from the defendant's Los Angeles residence, as depicted below. So you guys can see it there. That's the large capacity magazine. Whoa, he was red. He was strapped. Diddy was strapped for real. In addition, 6 legally purchased pum-pums with serial numbers, some of which were stored in pum-pum safes, were recovered from the defendant's residences. Although these particular pum-pums, both the legal and illegal firearms, and what makes the AR-15s illegal is the serial number being filed off. Once you tamper with the serial number of a weapon, you essentially make that firearm illegal. Were seized their where was I, guys? Hold on. Legal and illegal firearms were seized. Their presence in the defendant's homes demonstrates that the defendant has access to and surrounds himself with both firearms and ammunition. Likewise, even if the defendant were personally restrained by the court from obtaining new firearms himself, he could retain access of them through others. In sum, the defendant's regular use of violence and threats of violence, as well as the coercion described above against the victims and others, fostered a culture of fear in which these individuals believed they were unable to reject the defendant's demands without subjecting themselves to physical violence or other abuse. Okay, so let's keep going. This document is, how many pages is this document? I think it's like 18 pages. I don't think I'm going to read the entire thing, guys. What I will do, though, is actually, let's keep going. I'll keep going. All right. Certain of the firearms seized during the March 2024 searches, certain of the firearms seized during the March 2024 searches were licensed to a current member of Combs's security staff. In addition to that individual, during the course of the charged conspiracy, Combs has employed other security staff members with significant criminal history. Wow. Including violent crimes and firearm offenses. So, Diddy, he's just, oh my goodness. The next thing is Combs bribed witnesses and obstructed justice. It says throughout the time period charged in the indictment, when the defendant faced the possibility that his violent and criminal conduct could become public, the defendant and other members and associates of the enterprise pressured witnesses and victims not to report what they experienced, what they saw or heard to law enforcement, or to otherwise cover the criminal conduct, conceal the criminal conduct. For example, as noted above, in March 2016, the defendant was captured on video, surveillance, striking, kicking, and dragging a woman, this was Cassie, in a public area of a hotel in an apparent attempt to prevent her from leaving a freak off. When a member of hotel security staff intervened, the defendant attempted to offer the hotel security staff officer a stack of cash to ensure his silence. After the security guard refused the defendant's bribe, and after coordination between the defendant and his employees, the defendant's staff contacted other members of the hotel's security. At the same time, staff members were in close communication with the victim of the assault as well, all in an effort to cover up the defendant's assault and to prevent the incident from being publicly reported and publicly disclosed. Within days of the incident, the surveillance video disappeared from the hotel's server. Yeah, it disappeared, all right, but it certainly reappeared. Very strangely, it reappeared, I think, shortly after the settlement was reached between Diddy and Cassie. Similarly, throughout the time period charged in the indictment, members and associates of the enterprise have reached out to multiple victims on behalf of the defendant to convince them not to report the defendant's abuse. Most recently, in 2023, immediately following public allegations of certain of the defendant's crimes, including his physical and sexual abuse of women, The defendant and other members of the enterprise made repeated phone calls to victims and witnesses, during which they provided victims and witnesses with false narratives of events in an apparent effort to conceal the defendant's crimes. On at least 2 occasions, the defendant recorded these calls. Oh my goodness. On a co-conspirator's cell phone. Therefore, thereby attempting to obstruct his involvement. Thereby attempting to obscure his involvement in obstruction. Oh my goodness. All right, so I'm going to stop at the letter C, because I will continue to read this letter, but I want to make sure that I'm keeping up to date with everything that's happening with Sean P. Diddy, Puff Daddy Combs today, because he's supposed to be seen by a judge. And I don't want to miss that. I don't want to miss it at all. I want to be able to catch that. Hey, Susan, how are you? I want to be able to catch that for sure. So give me a second, guys, while I check in real time what's going on with Diddy. I don't want to miss. Let's see. Diddy arrested? Indictment. Let's see. PD. Okay. So I don't see any court appearances yet. I do not see any court appearances on him yet. But I do know that this is one that I will be watching. Press conference. That's old. That's what we just watched. Let's see. There's no other thing going on right now, guys. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and break out of here. I have a show scheduled at 2. It's day 1 of Carly Gray's trial. Carly Gray, let's see, is the 15-year-old that unalived her mom. And day 1 of her trial started yesterday. So I was trying to come and share it with you guys today, but then Diddy happened. So I'm going to reschedule Carly to this afternoon at around maybe 5 or 6 p.m. Eastern Standard. So if you guys have the notification set to be here for Carly, for the update on Carly, let's see, let me edit. It'll be updated for I'm going to do 6 p.m. guys, because that'll work well for me. I could get my walk-in done and get some other things done, and also watch to see if anything happens with Sean P. Diddy, PD, Puff Daddy, Love, Combs, if anything else occurs with him. But let me, before I hop off, before I get out of here, hold on. Let's see. I want to take a photo of the page that we're on. I got it. I got a picture of the page we're on. So we're good to go with that. We are golden. So that when I come back to go through the rest of this indictment and this letter, which I have both, I'll know where we left off. Okay, guys, so I will be back with any additional updates that happen with Diddy. Just stay tuned. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing today. As I said, this is a case that I intend to follow. Whether or not he goes to trial or if he takes a deal, whatever the case may be, I will be providing regular updates on this case. And my intention, not even my intention, I am going to his trial in New York City. I have to. There's like, I have to go, guys. I have to go because this is a federal case, so it's not going to be televised. Not unless they make us an exemption for it, which I highly doubt. So I will be there, going there in person, and providing you guys with updates. Now I'm probably not going to go for the entire trial because I feel like his trial is going to be long. I feel like this trial is going to be like rivaling Young Thug. Young Thug's trial has nothing on Diddy. Like Diddy's trial is going to be, I think it's going to be a long one if he does take it to trial. So that's why I said I don't think I will be going to the entire thing because I'm not going to live in New York City for like a year just to attend his trial. What I will do though is I'll plan for at least 5 months. I'll plan for at least 5 months in New York to give you guys, courtroom to YouTube updates on the case. Okay. All right, guys. Until next time.